Hello and welcome to this exploring session of this, as it was printed, the second part of the troublesome reign of King John, containing the death of Arthur Plantagenet, spoilers, the landing of Louis, spoilers, and the poisoning of King John at Swinstead Abbey. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. As it was some 3 times publicly acted by the Queen's Majesty's players in the Honourable City of London in 1591, it was printed, and it's been printed in this slightly weird 2-part construction, which seems to be entirely artificial. And in a moment, we'll also get an openly address to the gentlemen readers. So Alan, myself, Dan, and Francis are allowed to read this. Nobody else is. And actually, I don't know if any of us are gentlemen. I suspect we're not. I'm definitely not a gentleman. So, yeah, so it's, even though this is part 2, it basically just continues on from the action of last time, where the fate of Arthur was hanging in the balance. King John going to have his, sending Hubert to go out and gouge his eyes out, and then he doesn't gouge his eyes out, and then everyone's complaining about what's happening about Arthur, who potentially could take over the throne, and it's all up in the air and chaosy. And we're going to follow on from that with this wonderful team of readers. And today we have in the room, reading King John himself today is
Pamela Flanagan. I'm an Irish actor based in London.
And reading Pandulph today is
I'm Eric, and I'm still here.
And reading Essex and the opening dedication to the readers.
Hello, I'm... Oh.
Sorry, did I say Eric or Essex?
Essex, I think.
I did say Essex. Good, that's fine.
I'll answer to anything, it's fine. I am, however, Sarah Blake, and I'm an actor, writer, and director living in Germany.
And reading Beauchamp and Louis today is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk, neither an actor nor an academic.
And today reading Pembroke is...
I'm Lois Potter, and I am an academic, retired, living in London.
And today reading Salisbury, who for once gets some lines, is...
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm a minister living in London.
And today reading Hubert and a French lord is...
Hello, Dan, actor, doing a method reading in Montpellier, France.
And reading Peter the Prophet and Meloun is...
Hi, I'm Valentina, and I'm an Italian actor and voiceover artist in London.
Reading Arthur and Percy is...
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm a writing teacher. I live in the Northwest United States.
And today, being a total bastard, is...
Hi, I'm Francis Cox. I'm an actor living in Amsterdam.
Yes, that is the bastard offspring of Richard, King Richard, nominally of Falconbridge. So I am your host, Robert Crighton, and I am going to be reading stage directions and the occasional messengers who come popping their head round the corner to say hello. So without further ado, we're going to spoil what's about to happen next even further by reading what is printed in the published text to the gentlemen readers.
The changeless purpose of determined fate gives period to our care, or heart's content, when heaven's fixed time for this or that hath end. Nor can earth's pomp or policy prevent the doom ordained in their secret will. Gentles, we left King John replete with bliss that Arthur lived, whom he supposed slain, and Hubert posting to return those lords who deemed him dead and parted discontent. Arthur himself begins our latter act, our act of outrage, desperate fury, death, wherein fond rashness murdereth first a prince, and monkish falseness, poisoneth last a king. First scene shows Arthur's death in infancy, and last concludes John's fatal tragedy.
And thus ends our spoilers, as it were, to what's about to happen next. I mean, it could be used in performance because, of course, this is probably where you'd put an interval. if you're not doing it over 2 days. So if you wanted to go Brechtian with it, by basically telling everyone exactly what's about to happen, you could do that. I don't think that would work with the first half because so much anxiety is played on about the fate of people at different points. So, but any thoughts about that little introduction? No, nobody has any opinions.
Well, one small thing. It was the reference to Arthur's death in infancy. I mean, it just struck me as a bit strange. He's a bit older than an infant, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has dialogue, so.
Yeah. An odd word to use.
Probably for the purposes of the rhyme.
Well, I suppose you could also say that reference to rashness, presumably Arthur's rashness. I mean, it's sort of blaming him for what happens.
Victim blaming, always a good way to start a show. Any other thoughts? Would you cut it? Is basically perhaps the question I'm asking. Would you use it or would you not?
Yeah, the text is long enough without you have to do some cutting anyway.
It doesn't drive the plot forward or anything like that. It doesn't seem to serve any dramatic purpose.
No, it is very much a literary edition, I think. Though written very much in the style of a performed prologue kind of thing. Any other thoughts before we go into some action, Alan?
The only one there is I just wonder whether there's a bit of sarcasm in it, which is gentles we left King John replete with bliss. I didn't recall him being particularly blissful at the close of yesterday.
Oh, he was. The last couple of lines, I go myself the joyfulest man alive. He's, Arthur's not dead. Woohoo! If this follows on, this next scene follows immediately on from that moment. It does match that quite nicely. Lois.
Yeah, I think the first address to the gentleman readers is quite interesting because it although it's pretty much irrelevant to an audience nowadays, it does set up this feeling of, the other companies had big success with Tamburlaine, and now we're doing something which should appeal to you even more, whether it does or not. But I can't see that this particular address does anything really.
Okay, we will dismiss it then from our minds, and we will assume that basically King John has just left the stage, being told Arthur is alive, woohoo, and so we will go to scene 1 of this part 2, or we could always call it scene 14 if we really wanted to. Some people do. Enter young Arthur on the walls.
Now help, good hap, to further mine intent. Cross not my youth with any more extremes. I venture life to gain my liberty, and if I die, world's troubles have an end. Fear 'gins to dissuade the strength of my resolve. My hold will fail, and then at last I fall. And if I fall, no question, death is next. Better desist and live in prison still. Prison, said I, nay, rather death than so. Comfort and courage come again to me. I'll venture sure, 'tis but a leap for life.
And he leaps, and bruising his bones, is stunned. After he wakes from his trance, he speaks thus.
Oh, who is nigh? Somebody take me up. Where is my mother? Let me speak with her. Who hurts me thus? Speak, ho, where are you gone? Ah, me, poor Arthur, I am here alone. Why called I mother? How did I forget? My fall hath killed my mother's son. How will she weep at tidings of my death? My death indeed, O God, my bones are burst. Sweet Jesus, save my soul, forgive my rash attempt. Comfort my mother, shield her from despair when she shall hear my tragic overthrow. My heart controls the office of my tongue. My vital powers forsake my bruised trunk. I die. Heaven take my fleeting soul. And Lady Mother, all good hap to thee.
So saying he dies. Okay, let's just talk about the risk assessment here. And the practical stagecraft of how you make this work. So he's on the walls. He leaps. I don't know how you demonstrate to an audience the bruising of bones. After he wakes from his trance, I don't know how accurate any of these stage directions are. Of course, we never do. But you know, he presumably lies there for a while before recovering enough to lament on his own death, or more importantly, the death of his mother's son. Thoughts just briefly on this moment. I think we should linger on the death of Arthur for a moment. Lynn.
Yeah, I have always wondered how this particular bit of stage business was executed. They did, I was recently reminded, that have acrobats in early modern England. It was a popular form of entertainment. So, you know, my guess is that the person playing Arthur was some kind of acrobat who knew how to break that fall and not injure himself.
You know, and Francis.
Why is he jumping in the first place? Is he escaping or?
He's escaping.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, he's just literally been told he's going to have his eyes gouged out, and then no, maybe we won't gouge your eyes out. So I think the idea of getting out of Dodge is quite high on his mind. Yeah. Though we have had a relatively lengthy scene between that, so it's a thing. I don't know. Maybe he should be up there for a while during the previous scene, just as upstaging everyone. That might be fun. Alan.
I'm just wondering whether it's the art of course acting on how to die at inordinate length.
He does take a while. You know, he could be. It depends on precisely how he's, what he's injured. You know, has he got a punctured lung? Is he exsanguinating? Is you know, what precisely the actor decides to do in terms of his death? It does go on for a little bit. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've seen this one done in both this play and another one, and sometimes I think sometimes somebody sort of falls off stage, and then somebody rolls on, or Arthur rolls on from the wings, or you know, from somewhere behind. I mean, the logical way to do it really would be to have him trying to climb down a rope ladder or sheets or something, which is how people actually did try to escape, and then the thing would break halfway down. What's odd is that it says he leaps, and yet he talks about losing his hold and falling. It's two different ways really of for this thing to happen. I'm not sure whether the author and whoever wrote the stage directions were thinking along the same lines.
It seems that he's going for the thing about he's afraid of falling, but he does need to get down, and that the speech seems to progress towards he's just going to jump for it. Mm-hmm. So that does seem to be that there is intent that, you know, maybe it's not as high as he thinks it is. Mm-hmm. We've seen worse cliffhangers in Dragonfire, but that's an entirely different kettle of fish. So no umbrella being used at all. Other thoughts before we move on actually deeper into the scene and get to a bit of meat?
I was going to say that bit with my hold will fail. I wasn't sure if that was literal or just like my hold as in like, you know, like the castle, or like, you know, sort of like as in, you know, like a hold as in a keep as a building, or a symbolic sort of meaning of like his hold over life, or his hold over, you know, sort of his claim basically.
Yes, it's the strength of his resolve. Does he is it his hold on that resolve failing, rather than on the wall failing? Okay, so we've just to recap, we had King John going, "Woohoo! Arthur's alive." Arthur immediately dies, and the lords, who are a bit miffed about the news that Arthur might be dead, having been having left in something of high dudgeon. Now enter. So enter Pembroke, Salisbury, and Essex.
My lords of Pembroke and of Salisbury, we must be careful in our policy to undermine the keepers of this place. else we shall never find the prince's grave.
My lord of Essex, take no care for that. I warrant you it was not closely done.
And they see the corpse of Arthur.
Who is this? Lo, lords, the withered flower who in his life shined like the morning's blush, cast out of door, denied his burial right, a prey for birds and beasts to gorge upon.
Oh, ruthful spectacle, oh, damned deed, my sin is shake, my very heart doth bleed.
Leave childish tears, brave lords of England. If water floods could fetch his life again, my eyes should conduit forth a sea of tears. If sobs would help, or sorrows serve the turn, my heart should volley out deep, piercing plaints. But bootless were to breathe as many sighs as might eclipse the brightest summer's sun. Here rests the help, a service to his ghost. Let not the tyrant causer of this dole live to triumph in ruthless massacres. Give hand and heart, and Englishmen to arms. 'Tis God's decree to wreak us of these harms.
The best advice. But who comes posting here?
It is the entrance of Hubert de Burgh.
Right noble lords, I speak unto you all. The king entreats your soonest speed to visit him, who on your present want did ban and curse his birth, himself and me, for executing of his strict command. I saw his passion, and at fittest time assured him of his cousin's being safe, whom pity would not let me do to death. He craves your company, my lords, in haste, to whom I will conduct young Arthur straight, who is in health under my custody.
In health, base villain? But not I leave thy crime to God's revenge, to whom revenge belongs. Here shouldst thou perish on my rapier's point. Call'st thou this health? Such health betide thy friends and all that are of thy condition.
My lords, but hear me speak and kill me then. If here I left not this young prince alive, maugre the hasty edict of the king, who gave me charge to put out both his eyes, that God that gave me living to this hour, thunder revenge.
Sorry, we lost your sound there as you thundered revenge. Just very briefly, I think it was a party quirk of the software. Could you thunder revenge again, please?
That God that gave me living to this hour, thunder revenge upon me in this place. And as I tendered him with earnest love, so God loved me, and then I shall be well.
Hence, traitor, hence, thy counsel is herein.
And exit Hubert.
And in this place, appointed by the king, hath thrown him from this lodging here above, and sure the murder hath been done, so yet the body is not fully cold.
How say you, lords? Shall we with speed dispatch under our hands a packet into France, to bid the Dauphin enter with his force to claim the kingdom for his proper right? This title maketh lawful strength thereto. Besides, the Pope, on peril of his curse, hath barred us of obedience unto John. This hateful murder, Lois, his true descent, the holy charge that we received from Rome are weighty reasons. If you like my rede to make us all persever in this deed.
My lord of Essex, well have you advised. I will accord to further you in this.
And Salisbury will not gainsay the same, but aid that course as far forth as he can.
Then each of us send straight to his allies, to win them to this famous enterprise, and let us all, clad in palmer's weed, the 10th of April, at St. Edmund's Bury, meet to confer, and on the altar there swear secrecy, and aid to this advice. Meanwhile, let us convey this body hence, and give him burial, as befits his state. Keeping his month's mind and his obsequies, with solemn intercession for his soul. How say you, lordings? Are you all agreed?
The 10th of April at St. Edmundsbury. God letting not, I will not fail the time.
Then let us all convey the body hence.
And very neatly, they all exit with the body of Arthur. Everyone likes to leave the stage tidy. Arthur's dead. Let's rebel. It's go for a different option. So yeah, it's poor Hubert comes on, says, "My lord, Arthur is alive." Oh dear.
He's behind you.
Yeah, so there's all sorts of potential ways this scene could come out. You know, it is that question of how convincing the player of Arthur is making us feel genuinely for him at that moment with the lament that he had at his own death, and how this goes, because there is a sort of black farce quality to this. Thoughts from the room about the nobleman's rebellion, about Arthur's death, and Hubert, and all the reactions there too. Elizabeth.
I'm really confused because in the last part, Arthur died off stage and someone told us about it. And now we don't see him die, we just see his body. So I'm a little bit confused as to when exactly Arthur died.
He dies at the end of his speech, so he's fallen, he's stunned, and then he dies.
Okay.
And then his body remains very present for all the noblemen to view before they decide to pop off to Bury St Edmunds, which is always lovely for us because that's near where we're based. So always like to get a local reference in. If you're going to plan a rebellion, always start in our local tourist hotspot. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be played that Hubert is coming on and is so focused on talking to the lords that he doesn't actually spot the corpse. Because otherwise it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, there's always plenty of ways to stage it so you don't see a corpse. Are you waving, Pamela?
Yes, it was just, I very much enjoyed Essex, like, oh, if it weren't, you know, that God's job is to revenge this, oh, I would hurt you. And then lets Hubert just go. I was enjoying it.
Other thoughts?
Well, they're very quick to sort of rebel, and it's obvious that, like, they didn't exactly have love for Arthur. Otherwise, they would have been on his side in France all this time. So it's obviously an excuse to do something that they've been thinking about for a while.
I mean, we're following on from a scene where they, you know, there's a certain, you know, in theory they're recrowning the king and they're doing, you know, they're re-swearing oaths of allegiance and things, but they're all not very happy with King John at that point as well. So this is sort of an extension of that mini rebellion. You know, this dissent now turning into an open form of rebellion as they're going to choose a different king. Perhaps, who knows? Who knows where it's going to go? Francis.
Yeah, I find it interesting that they bring up the threat of the Pope as a reason for their rebellion, considering that they're Protestants.
Well, they're not at this time.
The characters aren't.
Right. Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so the play audience and the plays sympathies melee with Protestantism, but it hasn't been invented yet.
Well, no, that's true. But yeah, you're right. But King John does express all this anti-Catholic sentiment in the first act, which presumably they support. So yeah, I just found it a bit strange.
It might be that the nobles naturally themselves don't support that viewpoint. It's not very clear. I don't know if the nobles really made a statement. A lot of nobles were on stage for that moment, but I don't think, you know, Salisbury was there, didn't say a damn thing. Lois.
Yeah, I think actually that sort of supports Eric's point that these nobles are looking for more reasons to rebel against John. I mean, and because certainly they're bringing in the Pope's authorization would not play well to an audience, and so it would be part of what makes them look a bit suspect too. I mean, the whole thing really is a complicated mess. I mean, John's behavior has been horrible, but these people are not, you know, you can sympathize with their feelings about Arthur, but not with the rest of their feelings.
Yeah, it's sort of disaster management, isn't it? You use a disaster to get what you want. You use the feelings that it will stir up. So it could be very cynical, or it could be played very cynically. I mean, genuine sympathy as well for young lad. Not in a great way. Sarah.
I did get the impression as I was reading Essex that he'd worked all this out in his head beforehand. I mean, he had the ride over there. He did already think that Arthur was dead, even though Arthur wasn't dead. He thought he was. So he's had the ride over there, I suppose, to formulate it in his head. But he does that, oh, to arms, It's like, yeah, he's been working that out in his mind on the ride over. And then, he has this fully formed plan. Right. He's even picked the date. We'll go to Bury St Edmunds on April the 10th, and we'll meet there, and we'll do this. And it's like, yeah, I mean, just because this backs up what Eric was saying, it does seem like he's got it all worked out already, and he's just waiting for his moment to spring this
Yes,
plan.
you can hear the distant rumblings of Magna Carta. Alan.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what it's reminding me is modern resonance of a group of people who want to go to war, and they're just looking for a convenient excuse to hang it on.
Are you suggesting that Arthur is a sexed up document?
Far be it from me to make that suggestion, sir, but if you think that, I couldn't possibly disagree.
I wasn't quite going that far myself, but it was just the analogy that leapt to mind. Okay, any additional thoughts before we go on to scene 2?
And while the others were reading this, I was wondering whether whether Arthur's death was actually a suicide instead of an escape attempt. But I don't know, it's written as an escape attempt, but it sounds like it would probably be too high for him to escape properly. I don't know, maybe. I don't know.
I wondered that, but suicide was a real sin in those times, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think you could definitely play it as an act of desperation, and also someone who doesn't really know what they're doing. I mean, it depends on how old you cast Arthur. If he's very young, then it really is quite terrifying and pathetic. That moment of this poor child trying to escape and falling. If he's slightly older and just in a minority, as opposed to being actively young, then it will elicit slightly different thoughts about how much agency that character actually has. Okay.
He has just escaped from death, though.
Yes.
So, I mean, that does suggest that he's desperate rather than suicidal. I wouldn't have thought he'd be suicidal having just escaped from death.
Very true.
But certainly desperate, not knowing really what to do.
Okay, let's move into scene 2 then of this sequence that we're doing today. So we have the entrance of King John with 2 or 3 other people, and Peter the Prophet.
Disturbed thoughts, foredoomers of mine ill, distracted passions, signs of growing harms. Strange prophecies of imminent mishaps confound my wits and dull my senses so that every object these mine eyes behold seem instruments to bring me to mine end. Ascension day is come. John, fear not then the prodigies this prattling prophet threats. 'Tis come indeed. Oh, were it fully past, then were I careless of 1,000 fears. The dial tells me it is 12 at noon. Were 12 at midnight past, then might I vaunt false seers' prophecies of no import. Could I as well, with this right hand of mine, remove the sun from our meridian unto the moonstead circle of the Antipodes? Has turned this steel from 12 to 12 again. Then, John, the date of fatal prophecies should, with the prophet's life together, end. But multa cadunt inter calicem supremaque labra. Peter, unsay the foolish, doting dream, and by the crown of England, Here I swear to make thee great and greatest of thy kin.
King John, although the time I have prescribed be but 12 hours remaining yet behind, yet do I know by inspiration, ere that fixed time be fully come about, King John shall not be king as heretofore.
Vain buzzard! What mischance can chance so soon to set a king beside his regal seat? My heart is good, my body passing strong, my land in peace, my enemies subdued. Only my barons storm at Arthur's death, but Arthur lives. Aye, there the challenge grows. Were he dispatched unto his longest home, then were the king secure of 1,000 foes.
And enter Hubert.
Hubert, what news with thee? Where are my lords?
Odd news, my lord. Arthur, the lovely prince, seeking to escape over the castle walls, fell headlong down, and in the cursed fall, he brake his bones. And there, before the gate, your barons found him dead and breathless quite.
Is Arthur dead? Then, Hubert, without more words, hang the prophet. Away with Peter! Villain, out of my sight! I am deaf, begone! Let him not speak a word.
And exit Hubert with Peter the Prophet.
Now, John, thy fears are vanished into smoke. Arthur is dead, thou guiltless of his death. Sweet youth, but that I strived for a crown, I could have well afforded to thine age long life and happiness to thy content.
And enter the Bastard of Falconbridge.
Philip, what news with thee?
The news I heard was Peter's prayers, who wished like fortune to befall us all. And with that word, the rope, his latest friend, kept him from falling headlong to the ground.
There let him hang and be the raven's food, while John triumphs in spite of prophecies. But what's the tidings from the popelings now? What say the monks and priests to our proceedings? Or where's the barons that so suddenly did leave the king upon a false surmise?
The prelates storm and thirst for sharp revenge, but please your majesty, were that the worst, it little skilled, a greater danger grows, which must be weeded out by careful speed, or all is lost, for all is levelled at.
More frights and fears. Whate'er thy tidings be, I am prepared. Then, Philip, quickly say, mean they to murder or imprison me, to give my crown away to Rome or France? Or will they, each of them, become a king? Worse than I think it is, it cannot be.
Not worse, my lord, but every whit as bad. The nobles have elected Louis king, in right of Lady Blanche, your niece, his wife. His landing is expected every hour. The nobles, commons, clergy, all estates, incited chiefly by the cardinal, Pandulph, that lives here legate for the Pope, thinks long to see their newly elected king, and for undoubted proof, see here, my liege.
And hands letters to the king.
Letters to me from your nobility, to be a party in this action, who, under show of feigned holiness, appoint their meeting at St. Edmund's Bury, there to consult, conspire, and conclude, to overthrow and downfall of your state.
Why, so it must be. 1 hour of content matched with a month of passionate effects. Why shines the sun to favour this consort? Why do the winds not break their brazen gates and scatter all these perjured complices with all their counsels and their damned drifts? But see, the welkin rolleth gently on. There's not a lowering cloud to frown on them. The heaven, the earth, the sun, the moon, and all conspire with those confederates my decay. Then hell for me, if any power be there, forsake that place and guide me step by step to poison, strangle, murder in their steps these traitors. Oh, that name is too good for them, and death is easy. Is there nothing worse to wreck me on this proud, peace-breaking crew? What sayest thou, Philip? Why assist'st thou not?
These curses, good my lord, fit not the season. Help must descend from heaven against this treason.
Nay, thou wilt prove a traitor with the rest. Go, get thee to them. Shame come to you all.
I would be loath to leave your highness thus, yet you command, and I, though grieved, will go.
And he does indeed start to go, but...
Ah, Philip, whither goest thou? Come again.
My lord, these motions are as passions of a madman.
A madman, Philip. I am mad indeed. My heart is mazed, my senses all fordone, and John of England now is quite undone. Was ever king as I, oppressed with cares? Dame Eleanor, my noble mother queen, my only hope and comfort in distress, is dead, and England excommunicate, as I am interdicted by the Pope. And all churches cursed, their doors are sealed up, and for the pleasure of the Romish priest, the service of the highest is neglected. The multitude, a beast of many heads, do wish confusion to their sovereign. The nobles, blinded with ambitious fumes, assemble powers to beat mine empire down, and more than this, elect a foreign king. O England, wert thou ever miserable? King John of England sees thee miserable. John, 'tis thy sins that make it miserable. Quisquid delerant reges plectunter archivi. Philip, as thou hast ever loved thy king, so show it now post to St. Edmundsbury. Dissemble with the nobles, know their drifts, confound their devilish plots and damned devices. Though John be faulty, yet let subjects bear. He will amend and right the people's wrongs. A mother, though she were unnatural, is better than the kindest stepdame is. Let never Englishman trust foreign rule. Then, Philip, show thy fealty to thy king, and mongst the nobles plead thou for the king.
I go, my lord. See how he is distraught. This is the accursed priest of Italy, hath heaped these mischiefs on this hapless land. Now, Philip, hadst thou Tully's eloquence, then mightest thou hope to plead with good success.
And exit the bastard.
And art thou gone? Oh, success may follow thee. Thus hast thou showed thy kindness to thy king. Sirrah, in haste, go greet the Cardinal Pandulph. I mean, the legate from the Pope. Say that the king desires to speak with him.
And as the attendant exits, we will pause there about midway through the scene. Lots of things happened. Eleanor's dead.
Yeah.
Wow, you know.
Yeah.
It's quite sad. Quite liked Eleanor.
Yeah. Her and Constance.
Mm. Yeah, there were all those great first half is well, it's not quite half, but that first part is lots of characters we really liked. Actually, to be fair, I wasn't that fussed about Arthur, but yeah, so busy scene. Let's start at the top with superstition and things. Do we remember the 5 moons from the other day? There does seem to be a follow through of superstition and fears and King John seems to be holding on to those. And we get the return of Peter the Prophet. Briefly, thoughts about Peter and John's mental state at the beginning of the scene. No thoughts about poor Peter. I say poor Peter because the intimation is that he's immediately been hanged the moment he got off stage. I mean, he doesn't have time. It's a quick drop. Lois.
Yeah, well, there are several interesting things there. I mean, one is that one is expecting some kind of ironic twist on the prophecy so that it will come true, but not in the way they expect. I mean, the other thing is just that reference to the rope breaking his fall coming so soon after Arthur's fall. It just seems like a curious sort of parallelism, really.
It's morbid, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tone of this scene is much darker. It's and grimmer, and yes, there's still a sort of grim humor to it all, but it's not funny ha anymore. I think we have shifted. Sarah.
Yeah, it's a lot darker. I loved that speech at the beginning, actually. I mean, there's real, it's just like, yeah, John descending into madness. It's really tasty. I don't know, I thought it was. But I have to say, I couldn't really get worked up about Peter. It's like, yeah, he's kind of got it coming. if you're gonna traipse about the countryside getting cheeses off people in return for, like, crap that you spout, then yeah, sooner or later someone's gonna hang you.
And the bastard turns up and just delivers lots and lots and lots of really bad news. And the bastard sort of the energy of that character in this scene as well seems slightly different to perhaps we've had elsewhere in the play. How did you find the bastard, sir? Yeah, Francis.
Yeah, there's something slightly desperate about his continuing loyalty to King John now that all his nobles have deserted him, I think.
Do they know that they've been deserted, though?
Yes.
Yeah, he's turned up with the letters.
Oh yeah, of course he has. Yeah.
That's news that Philip, one of the bits of news that Philip's arrives with.
But also, he's completely reasonable compared to before, where they thought him mad. I mean, like in the first part of the text, and now he's kind of much more, well, maybe not down to earth, but definitely more reasonable than John.
More stable.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've swapped, haven't they? Really?
Well, I think, to be fair, the bastard was always reasonably stable. It's just that he wasn't desperately nice at times in the first half, and
prone to visions.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming everybody saw the Five Moons, and he just was the first to see them. We didn't quite get into the Five Moons in session actually yesterday. We started talking about it in a bit more detail after we stopped recording, which is always helpful. That sense of this scene is following on with that sense of the heavens are doing things. And what is Peter the prophet channeling? Is it real? Is it not real? What is he saying? Anything that's to the purpose? I haven't really taken in any of the prophet's prophecies at all, if I'm honest. Francis?
No, I think Alan was first. Did you want to say?
Yeah, Alan.
I must admit that if we were looking for cuts in this, I think Peter the Prophet would probably be a prime candidate.
Well, Francis.
One thing I did admire about Peter the Prophet was he didn't sort of, facing death, he didn't recant his prophecy. He just stuck with it, which I thought was quite brave of him.
Pamela.
I also think you can't cut him because he's the one who says about everything going wrong for King John and that prophecy about the Ascension Day. And so if you don't have that, then I don't think you have as much impetus for John's insanity or descent into madness in this particular scene. Like, he's talking about this being the day that prophecy has come. It's what's kind of making him as unsure as he is, I think, or it's one of the main reasons.
Yes, because otherwise the scene just becomes an info dump. Because in a sense, that's all that's really happening, actually, is that stuff we already know is being told to characters on stage. And if you take Peter Prophet out, then there isn't really much of a scene here. You might keep a speech or a bit of a speech just to keep the story moving on. That said, we haven't finished the scene. There's still more to go. Reasonably long chunkette. Someone mentioned in chat was asking whether the first mention of Eleanor's death. I think that was the first. I don't think we've heard any other mention of that particular piece of bad news. So John's being wrong-footed left, right and centre. He just can't win, can he? Just can't win.
It's all gone to rat
He can't even gouge the eyes out of a small child. It's just nothing's going right for him at all. How did you find reading the prophet? What's the prophet's eye view of this?
Well, like I had a bit the same like why doesn't he recant? And also kind of goes like, no, you're actually gonna die, or you're gonna die. Like you're not gonna be king earlier than what I predicted the first time. But I think like it's either he cannot he needs to stick to his gun, or is incredibly stupid.
Francis,
In terms of, like,
it occurs to me that traditionally prophets in theatre usually speak truth to power. I'm thinking of Tiresias in Oedipus Rex.
Yeah, and he always has a thoroughly miserable time as well.
Yeah.
Pamela, I saw a hand.
Sorry, I was just going back to what the prophet had said yesterday as well, because he's kind of the person who tells the truth, and it's backing up Francis, but yeah, he's the person who tells the truth. And as we mentioned in the chat yesterday, it's like, oh my God, don't tell him that, like, just say what he wants to hear. But he doesn't do that at the start, so I think it would kind of...
Yeah, he needs to go on like that. Yeah,
exactly.
And I mean, when in doubt, hang the prophet.
Yeah, within 5
in hopes
lines.
that the prophecy dies with him.
Within 5 lines of his exit as well. I mean, it is such a quick hanging. I mean, to be fair, a professional hangman will not hang around. It's a very quick process. It wasn't actually an intended pun. I'm quite glad that slipped under the radar. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about prophets is there's just no point dramatically in anybody speaking a prophecy in a play unless it's going to come true. I mean, you can't have a play where people keep saying, hey, that prophecy never came true, did it? No, it didn't. I mean, it's got to come true some way or other.
I can think of a few television series that set up some prophecies in the first couple of seasons that never quite came true because of casting changes mid show. So. But you're right in that sense. The author always intends the prophecy to come true, or mislead people into thinking it's going to mean one thing than the other.
There's also a sort of sense of irony because, like John mentions, we have to poison, strangle, and murder the Baron, and but we know from the beginning that he's going to be poisoned. Yeah, it's kind of like, do what you are going to be done to.
Well, the danger there is, of course, that particular piece of data is coming from something that possibly wasn't performed, but most people should know probably that's how he dies. There has been a previous play where that occurs, and there are other materials and things, so it would be knowledge.
Yeah. I think it was sort of a notorious fact that he was poisoned by a monk. So
yes, monkish business. Okay, let's finish the scene because we're halfway through and John has been left alone, exit attendant at this point, to go and greet the cardinal. So King John is left alone on stage with his thoughts.
Now, John, bethink thee how thou mayest resolve, and if thou wilt continue England's king, then cast about to keep thy diadem, for life and land and all is levelled at. The Pope of Rome, 'tis he that is the cause. He curseth thee. He sets thy subjects free from due obedience to their sovereign. He animates the nobles in their wars. He gives away the crown to Philip's son, and pardons all that seek to murder thee. And thus blind zeal is still predominant. Then, John, there is no way to keep thy crown, but finally to dissemble with the Pope. That hand that gave the wound must give the salve to cure the hurt, else quite incurable. Thy sins are far too great to be the man to abolish Pope and Popery from thy realm. But in thy seat, if I may guess at all, a king shall reign that shall suppress them all. Peace. John, here comes the legate of the Pope. Dissemble thou, and whatsoe'er thou sayest, yet with thy heart wish their confusion.
And at this point, the cardinal has indeed entered.
Now, John, unworthy man to breathe on earth, that dost oppugn against thy mother church, why am I sent for to thy cursed self?
And King John kneels.
Thou man of God, vice-regent for the Pope, the holy vicar of St. Peter's Church, upon my knees I pardon crave of thee, and do submit me to the see of Rome. And now, for penance of my high offence, to take on me the holy cross of Christ, and carry arms in holy Christian wars.
No, John, thy crouching and dissembling thus cannot deceive the legate of the Pope. Say what thou wilt, I will not credit thee. Thy crown and kingdom both are taken away, and thou art cursed without redemption.
Accursed indeed to kneel to such a drudge, and get no help with thy submission. Unsheath thy sword and slay the misproud priest that thus triumphs o'er thee, a mighty king. No, John, submit again, dissemble yet, for priests and women must be flattered. Yet, Holy Father, thou thyself dost know no time too late for sinners to repent. Absolve me, then, and John doth swear to do the utmost, whatever thou demand'st.
John, now I see thy hearty penitence. I rue and pity thy distressed estate. One way is left to reconcile thyself, and only one which I shall show to thee. Thou must surrender to the see of Rome thy crown and diadem. Then shall the Pope defend thee from the invasion of thy foes. And where his holiness hath kindled France, and set thy subjects' hearts at war with thee, then shall he curse thy foes and beat them down, and that seek the discontentment of the king.
From bad to worse, or I must lose my realm, or give my crown for penance unto Rome. A misery more piercing than the darts that break from burning exhalation's power. What, shall I give my crown with this right hand? No, with this hand defend thy crown and thee. What news with thee?
And saved by the bell, for here enters an English messenger. Please it your majesty, there is descried on the coast of Kent 100 sailor ships, which of all men is thought to be the French fleet, under the conduct of the Dauphin, so that it puts the country in a mutiny. So they send to your grace for succour. Exit messenger.
How now, Lord Cardinal? What's your best advice? These mutinies must be allayed in time by policy or headstrong rage at least. Oh, John, these troubles tire thy weird soul, and like to Luna in a sad eclipse, so are thy thoughts and passions for this news. Well may it be when kings are grieved so, the vulgar sort work princes o'erthrow.
King John, for not effecting of thy plighted vow, this strange annoyance happens to thy land. But yet be reconciled unto the church, and nothing shall be grievous to thy state.
On, Pandulph, be it as thou hast decreed. John will not spurn against thy sound advice. Come, let's away, and with thy help, I trow, my realm shall flourish, and my crown in peace.
And exit King John and Pandulph. Yes, Eric's put in the chat, the bastards asides have become John's. Yeah, John is allowed now to do lengthy asides while somebody else is waiting to speak. So, kneeling before Pandulph. I mean, what is it about the Queen's men and kneeling? They seem to do an inordinate. I mean, they've all got to have, terrible knee problems. I would have thought doing this in rep with the True Chronicle of King Lear, where my God, it's an Olympic standard of kneeling. Sorry, there's been a lot of kneeling in this play as well. I had to get that off my chest there. So yeah, and it's interesting because in a sense the messenger stops King John from saying something awkward, but he doesn't exactly send him good news. So it's sort of saved by the bell, but not saved by the bell kind of moment. It's really interesting. Thoughts, King John, yourself? How are you finding your journey through this scene?
I mean, there's a lot going on. I was quite enjoying the asides and having that time to kind of think through what's going on, and also the machinations of it, but also the making the Pandulph wait. I was enjoying the kind of power play of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even though you're in a submissive position, there is something nice about that.
That wait for me.
Yeah. I saw I had Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think I've been waiting for a while for the characters to jump out and like really take the reins of the play. And I think King John really does do that. He's really compelling. You root for him as well. But I do also like this religious aspect to the political intrigue. I don't think it's something that was come across in plays before, where we have the religious right kind of at loggerheads with the main character.
The religious arrival of Pandulph is also a political act as well, as the other low-level politics. So that I find really interesting. Yes, I absolutely. Lynn.
Yeah, just sort of piggybacking on Elizabeth's observation. You know, she was saying last time that it was kind of hard to find a real hero, a real main character, but she feels like John has come into his own in this scene. And I was just thinking, as the part 2 scene 2 progresses, what a tour de force for an actor this whole scene is. He's just all over the place, physically as well as emotionally. He's on the throne, he's on his feet, he's on his knees, he's angry, he's despairing, he's conniving, and it's so sustained. So even if you don't much like him as a person, on a sort of meta level, you really have to admire the performance that's going on in this scene.
Yeah, it is a sense that he is the title character for a reason, and we are getting a sense of that now. Yes, Lois.
Yeah, I noticed an interesting bit of intertextuality in Tamburlaine. After Tamburlaine has made an incredibly poetic speech to Xenocrates, someone says, "What is your grace in love?" And he says to Shelley's, "Women must be flattered." Now in this, we get John saying, "Priests and women must be flattered." And I just wonder, given that these plays were sort of set in opposition by that initial address to the gentleman readers, whether, this is one actor competing against another actor and sort of showing he can do it too.
Yeah, I like that when plays are in conversation or in competition with each other. Yeah, absolutely. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that just a throwaway line in there, which is trying to prefigure Henry VIII. The bit about a future occupant of the throne will do something about the priest of Rome.
It's really interesting with the earlier with the John Bale play, where there's a character towards the end, Imperial Majesty, who turns up, who basically sort of morphs. He starts off as Henry VIII, sort of morphs into Elizabeth I by the end of the way that play was written. It's very confused chronology, but there's a sort of weird morphing of time in that, which this sort of nods to, possibly not, possibly has absolutely no knowledge of that play at all. But it's an interesting parallel. But yeah, they can't resist it, can they?
No. The other thing that struck me is that we haven't got locus in any of the stage directions as to where things are happening. But from context, I think we've got to accept that this is actually they're still actually physically based in France.
Could indeed be. It's a location English court, probably London, is what the Revels went with.
And doesn't the messenger says about the boats on the Kent coast, which would
be we're being invaded. And besides, we've got a hot foot over to Bury St Edmunds and on, so and the roads. Well,
they haven't improved in the last 100 years.
No. At least King John didn't have Network Rail.
You also kind of get the impression that you also kind of get the impression that like Pandulph just wants him to grovel even more. like, well, because like that's the status of, you know, that he's used to, like sort of being, you know, the whole kissing the hand thing that I don't know, that's what we do in the Orthodox Church, like, you know, kissing the ring, or kissing, you know, sort of, oh yes, kneel further, kneel more, and then I'll forgive you, kind of thing.
And you know that towards the end of John's dialogue, you know, these troubles tire thy wearied soul. You know, he's sort of just exhausted by constant fighting, and not even literal fighting. You know, just the infighting that's going on. You know, it's his government is limping along, and I think he's just tired. Can I just be king for a day? Be quite nice. Lynn?
Yeah, the text hasn't put much emphasis on it yet, but let's all notice that the prophet's prophecy has indeed technically come true. He's going to have to render up his crown to the papacy. So Peter was technically right. He's going to lose his crown on Ascension Day, and here it's happening. So as we were all pretty much agreeing, you don't put a prophet in a play and have him be bogus. So, oops.
Though coincidentally, we're doing the Peddler's Prophecy in the evenings, and there we do quite explicitly have a prophet who's we know is telling lies. So you know, it's that thing of we know they're not going to come true. So you know, if you know they're a con artist, then you can get away with it.
The full pony kind of thing. So
yeah. Oh yes. Okay, let's move on to scene 3. We've got 2 more scenes to go in this session. Scene 3, enter the nobles. Pembroke, Essex, got Chester down for some reason. Don't know where that one come from. Beauchamp, Claire, with others.
Now, sweet Saint Edmund, holy saint in heaven, whose shrine is sacred, high esteemed on earth, infuse a constant zeal in all our hearts to prosecute this act of mickle weight. Lord Beauchamp, say, what friends have you procured?
The Lord Fitzwater, Lord Percy, and Lord Ross vowed meeting here this day, the 11th hour.
Under the cloak of holy pilgrimage, by that same hour, on warrant of their faith, Philip Plantagenet, a bird of swiftest wing, Lord Eustace Vesey, Lord Cressy, and Lord Mowbray, appointed meeting at St. Edmund's shrine.
Until their presence, I'll conceal my tale. Sweet complices in holy Christian acts that venture for the purchase of renown, thrice welcome to the league of high resolve that pawn their bodies for their souls' regard.
Now wanteth but the rest to end this work. In pilgrim's habit comes our holy troop, a furlong hence, with swift, unwonted pace. Maybe they are the persons you expect.
With swift, unwonted gait, see what a thing is zeal that spurs them on with fervence to this shrine. Now joy come to them for their true intent. And in good time, here come the war men all, that sweat in body by the mind's disease. Hap and heart's ease, brave lordings, be your lot.
Indeed, here enters Bastard and Percy.
Amen, my lords. The like betide your luck, and all that travail in a Christian cause.
Cheerly replied, brave branch of kingly stock. A right Plantagenet should reason so. But silence, lords, attend our coming's cause. The servile yoke that pained us with toil on strong instinct hath framed this conventicle to ease our necks of servitude's content. Should not I not name the foeman of our rest? Which of you all, so barren in conceit as cannot level at the man I mean? That, lest enigma's shadow shining truth, plainly to paint, as truth requires no art, the effect of this resort importeth this: to root and clean extirpate Tyrant John. Tyrant, I say, appealing to the man, if any here, that loves him. And I ask, what kinship, lenity, or Christian reign rules in the man to bar this foul impeach? First, I infer the Chester's banishment, for reprehending him in most unchristian crimes was special notice of a tyrant's will. But were this all, the devil should be saved. But this the least of many thousand faults that circumstance with leisure might display. Our private wrongs no parcel of my tale, which now in presence, but for some great cause might wish to him as to the mortal foe. But shall I close the period with an act abhorring the ears of Christian men? His cousin's death, that sweet, unguilty child, untimely butchered by the tyrant's means? Here is my proofs, as clear as gravel brook. And on the same I further must unfur that who upholds a tyrant in his course is culpable of all his damned guilt, to show the which is yet to be described. My lord of Pembroke, show what is behind, only I say that were there nothing else to move us but the Pope's most dreadful curse, whereof we are assured if we fail, it were enough to instigate us all with earnestness of sprite to seek a mean to dispossess John of his regiment.
Well hath my lord of Essex told his tale, which I aver for most substantial truth. And more to make the matter to our mind, I say that Lewis, in challenge of his wife, hath title of an uncontrolled plea to all that longeth to our English crown. Short tale to make, the see apostolic hath offered dispensation for the fault, if any be, as trust me none I know, by planting Lewis in the usurper's room. This is the cause of all our presence here, that on the holy altar we protest to aid the right of Lewis with goods and life, who on our knowledge is in arms for England. What say you, lords?
As Pembroke saith, I fair with Salisbury, fair Lewis of France, the stars Lady Blanche, have title of uncontrolled strength to England, and what longeth to the crown, in right whereof, as we are true informed, the prince is marching hitherward in arms. Our purpose to conclude that with the world is to invest him, as we may devise, king of our country, in the tyrant's stead, and so the warrant and warrant are sworn, and so the intent for which we really came.
My lord of Salisbury, I cannot couch my speeches with the needful words of art, as doth beseem in such a weighty work. But what my conscience and my duty will, I purpose to impart. For Chester's exile, blame his busy wit, that meddled where his duty quite forbade. For any private causes that you have, methinks they should not mount to such a height as to depose a king in their revenge. For Arthur's death, King John was innocent. He, desperate, was the deathsman to himself, which you, to make a colour to your crime, unjustly do impute to his default. But where fell traitorism hath residence, there wants no words to set despite on work. I say 'tis shame and worthy all proof to rest such petty wrongs in terms of right against a king anointed by the Lord. Why, Salisbury, admit the wrongs are true, yet subjects may not take in hand revenge and rob the heavens of their proper power. Where sitteth he to whom revenge belongs? And doth a pope, a priest, a man of pride, give charters for the lives of lawful kings? What can he bless, or who regards his curse, but such as give to man and takes from God? I speak it in the sight of God above. There's not a man that dies in your belief, but sells his soul perpetually to pain. Aid Lewis, leave God. Kill John, please hell. Make havoc of the welfare of your souls, for here I leave you, in the sight of heaven, a troop of traitors, food for hellish fiends. If you desist, then follow me as friends. If not, then do your worst, as hateful traitors. For Lewis he's right, alas, 'tis too lame, a senseless claim if truth be title's friend. In brief, if this be cause of our resort, our pilgrimage is to the devil's shrine. I came not, lords, to troop as traitors do, nor will I counsel in so bad a cause. Please you return, we go as friends. If not, I to my king, and you where traitors please.
And he exits.
A hot young man, and so, my lords, proceed. I let him go, and better lost than found.
What say you, lords? Will all the rest proceed? Will you all with me swear upon the altar that you will to the death be aid to Lewis and enemy to John? Every man lay his hand on by mine in witness of his heart's accord.
And they do so.
Well then, every man to arms to meet the king who is already before London.
Enter a messenger.
What news, herald?
The right Christian prince, my master, Louis of France, is at hand, coming to visit your honours, directed hither by the right honourable Richard, Earl of Bigot, to confer with your honours.
How near is his highness?
Ready to enter your presence. And ta-da! Enter Louis. But we'll stop for a moment there before Louis enters. I'm assuming Morse will be following shortly on after. So everyone gets a chance to do their stump speech. It's always nice to get a chance to put forward your case. Everyone in the room, it's like they're going, yeah, Pembroke, Salisbury, Essex. They haven't said very much in the play so far. We'll give them a speech now, and that'll make up for earlier. And of course, the bastard comes in like a steamroller and just doesn't mince his words.
No.
Doesn't mince his words. So yeah, how convinced were we by their arguments? Whose side are you on?
I'm on side of John. I still think John is really compelling.
So, anyone going with the rebels? Who? Show of hands. Who's on the side of the rebels? Oh, Alan's in favour.
Well, I'm not in favour of the rebels. It's funny. Normally with these plays, I'm like, I'm on one side or the other, but I'm actually just really enjoying all the shenanigans, really, and it's like I don't think they're particularly great. Neither is John, but there's just some fantastic machinations going on, so I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. You don't have to, you don't. We don't have to have Magna Carta. It's fine.
Yeah, true.
Who needs habeas corpus? So any other thoughts about the this little proto-rebellion going on here, Francis?
I was just surprised that the bastard, after having made that speech in which he denounced the nobles, was allowed to get out unscathed.
Well, we don't know. Maybe he had a crossbow on him or something.
Oh, yeah, could be. Yeah.
Yeah, sudden retreat. His honor guard suddenly burst in, surround him, walk backwards to the exit. Sarah.
He does exit really swiftly as well. I mean, you could play that with a wonderful bit of huffage if you wanted to. I mean, he could absolutely flounce there.
And
if he wanted to go that way.
Well, the thing is, he is inviting them to follow him, so he is exiting with a purpose. If you're on my side, come along. Follow me out of the room. And of course, there's no note as to whether anybody does. For all we know, there are silent people on stage who go. Pamela.
I'm just wondering about the bastard, actually, because of the last scene. And King John has kind of denounced him, told him that he's going to be a traitor, said to go away. Obviously, then has brought him back and said, go and argue on my case. So I'm kind of surprised, I guess, that the bastard does do that. And I'm wondering whether he's going to swap sides at some point.
I think it's an important tension to have when he starts speaking as to where he's going.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, his power base is purely John anyway, because, you know, he doesn't have his titled lands, you know, because he's basically given up his inheritance. So, you know, it was only Eleanor and John going, hey, you're part of the family now.
Right.
So if they're no longer in charge, he might not have a power base. I mean, this is all a bit outside of things. You know, there wasn't much in the text. Francis?
No, Alan was first.
Oh, yeah, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the bastard was made Duke of Normandy in order to get the challenge in against the ostrich. And he has an ulterior motive for not running with what the other rebels are doing, because he arguably has a better case for succeeding to the throne than Louis does. So I think the self-interest, and basically you've got, well, as we've seen throughout British history, a dysfunctional royal family or extended royal family, including all of the French aristos, you know, the holdovers from William the Bastard's band.
Yes, woe betide a king who doesn't have an heir, woe betide a king who has far too many. Francis?
Yeah, my feeling is that the bastard is just so taken with the fact that, you know, he's Richard the Lionheart's son. You know, that's, you know, he just can't let that go. And he's, you know, that's what motivates him all the time. You know, that's it. You know, he's just going with that. There's no, you know, he's just hanging on to that one fact, and that's not going to sway his loyalty. No, nothing's going to sway his loyalties.
Lois?
Yeah, so that means that basically his loyalty is to the House of Plantagenet, because he belongs to it. And so that means John, and that means John's heir, and so on, regardless of anybody else's claim.
Lynn?
Yeah, I think I agree with Francis and Lois that if, particularly if as an actor you're trying to kind of find out where this character is coming from, I think that personal tie to the House of Plantagenet is really important. If we think back to that first scene, part of the first scene, where he has this sort of supernatural intuition that he's Richard the Lionheart's son and he can't make himself claim to be Robert Falconbridge's issue. So yeah, I think there's a sort of deep connection with that family. So interestingly enough, the illegitimate son of King Richard seems to be the person with the purest motives.
Another tangle in this weird web this play weaves. Francis?
Yeah, also the other thing that occurs to me is he's very young and he doesn't have the sort of world experience to realize that, you know, life is a little more complicated than just, you know, believing in one thing.
Okay, we will complete the scene because we're only halfway through it. So in the gap between the exit of the Bastard and the arrival of Louis, 2 years have passed. Magna Carta has come and gone. That's history. You can ignore that. Yeah, it's been quite an eventful entrance and exit there. Quite lots happened that we'll never talk about again. Anyway, enter Louis, Meloun, French lords, Bigorre with his troops.
Lords of England, Louis salutes you all. As friends, as firm well-willers of his weal, at whose request from plenty-flowing France, crossing the ocean with a southern gale, he is, in person, come at your commands to undertake and gratify withal the fullness of your favours proffered him. But world's brave men, omitting promises, till time be minister of more amends, I must acquaint you with our fortune's course. The heavens doing favours on my head, have in their conduct, safe with victory, brought me along your well-manured bounds, with small repulse and little cross of chance, your city Rochester, with great applause, by some divine instinct laid arms aside, and from hollow holes of Thamesis, echo apace replied, Vive le Roi! From thence, along the wanton rolling glade, to Troyes-Navant, your fair metropolis, with luck came Lewis, to show his troops of France, waving our ensigns with the dallying winds, the fearful object of fell frowning war, where, after some assault and small defence, heavens, may I say, and not my warlike troop, tempered their hearts to take a friendly foe within the compass of their high-built walls, giving me title, as it seemed they wish. Thus fortune, lords, acts to your forwardness, means of content, in lieu of former grief, and may I live but to requite you all, world's wish were mine, in dying noted yours.
Welcome the balm that closes up our wounds, the suffering medicine for our quicker cure, the anchor of our hope, the only prop whereon depends our lives, our lands, our will. Without the which a sheep without their herd, except a shepherd winking at the wolf. We stray, we pine, we run to thousand harms. No marvel then, though, with unwonted joy, we welcome him that beats his woes away.
Thanks to you all of this religious league, a holy knot of Catholic consent. I cannot name you, lordings, man by man, but, like a stranger unacquainted yet, in general, I promise faithful love. Lord Bigot brought me to Snedman's shrine, giving me warrant of a Christian oath, that this assembly came devoted here to swear, according as your packet showed, homage and loyal service to ourselves. I need not doubt the surety of your wills, since well I know, for many of your sakes, the towns have yielded on their own accords. Yet, for a fashion, not for misbelief, my eyes must witness, and these ears must hear, your oath upon the holy altar sworn, and after, march to end our coming's cause.
And we intend no other than good truth, all that's our presence of this holy league, for confirmation of our better trust, in presence of his highness swear with me, to seek all that myself shall utter real, I, Thomas Plantagenet, Earl of Salisbury, swear upon the altar and by the holy army of the saints, homage of allegiance to the right Christian prince, Louis of France, as true and rightful king to England, Cornwall and Wales, and to their territories, in the defence whereof, I, upon the holy altar, swear all forwardness.
And all the English lords swear, as the noble Earl hath sworn, so swear we all.
I rest assured on your holy oath, and on this altar, in like sort I swear, love to you all, and princely recompense, to guerdon your good wills unto the full. And since I am at this religious shrine, my good well-willers, give us leave a while, to use some orisons, ourselves apart, to all the holy company of heaven, that they will smile upon our purposes, and bring them to a fortunate event.
We leave your highness to your good intent.
And exit the lords of England, leaving the French behind.
Now, Viscount Meloun, what remains behind? Trust me, these traitors to their sovereign state are not to be believed in any sort.
Indeed, my lord, they that infringe their oaths and play the rebels against their native king will, for as little cause, revolt from you, if ever opportunity incite them so. For once forsworn, and never after sound, there's no affiance after perjury.
Well, Meloun, well, let's smooth with them a while, until we have as much as they can do. And when their virtue is exhaled dry, I'll hang them for the guerdon of their help. Meanwhile, we'll use them as a precious poison to undertake the issue of our hope.
'Tis policy, my lord, to bait our hooks with merry smiles and promise of much weight. But when your highness needeth them no more, 'Tis good make sure work with them, lest indeed they prove to you as to their natural king.
Trust me, my lord, right well have you advised. Venom for use, but never for a sport, is to be dealt with, lest it infect. Were you installed as soon as I hope you shall, be free from traitors and dispatch them all.
That's so I mean, I swear before you all, on this same altar, and by heaven's power, there's not an English traitor of them all. John once dispatched, and I, fair England's king, shall on his shoulders bear his head one day. But I will crop it for their guilt's desert, nor shall their heirs enjoy their signories, but perish by their parents' foul amiss. This I have sworn, this I will perform, ere it come unto the height I hope. Lay down your hands, and swear the same with me.
And the French lords swear.
Why, so now call them in, and speak them fair.
And exit a French lord.
A smile of France will feed an English fool. Bear them in hand as friends, for so they be, but in the heart, like traitors as they are.
Enter the English lords with the French one.
Now, famous followers, chieftains of the world, have we solicited with hearty prayer to heaven in favour of our high attempt. Leave we this place, and march we with our power, to rouse the tyrant from his chiefest hold. And when our labours have a prosperous end, each man shall reap the fruit of his desert. And so resolved, brave followers, let us hence.
And they exit. You can't trust the French, can you? I mean, just look at that. They're...
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Oh, because you can trust the English.
You can't trust anyone.
I was going to
But
say
that's what the play is saying. The play is going, look, they've come over here, and you can't trust anyone. You know, to a degree, it's a commonplace. You can't trust the traitors who have betrayed their, for you. You will never be able to trust them, and that turns up again and again. And got a good point. You can't trust these people. They are eminently trustworthy. Alan.
And to answer Pamela's point, actually the only English character we've met is Peter the Prophet. All the rest are French.
Well, by descent.
All of the English, not all of the nobles in England at this period were still the French.
But they consider themselves English, right?
No.
Well, it is a bit borderline, to be fair.
Okay.
But many of them are by now quite Anglophone, I would have thought. Lynn, I saw a hand.
I think the conceit of the play is that they're English, but yeah, they would have been Norman French and speaking French. I used to know this, like when Parliament first started keeping bilingual records, but like all the official documents were in French or Latin at this point. But anyway, my response to this scene is, okay, after Louis says to his lords, you can't trust those guys. They've already betrayed their own king. I'm not going to take their oath seriously. And as soon as I'm in power and have the means to do it, I'll turn on them, even though I just took an oath to be friendly to them. But hey, let's all swear an oath together. Like, what? Like, what's the point of that when you've just basically said, I've lied to these guys because I'm pretty sure they've lied to me, but let's all swear another oath. I mean, that was just weird. Yeah,
but no, they're his omen, so the oath is true. Thunder, thunder, thundercats ho. That's what's going on there. You're right. I think everybody's duplicitous. I mean, it's and just some of the arse licking that is going on here. I loved Salisbury's speech. The balm that closeth up our wounds, etc., etc., and just going, aren't you? You are here to save it. And it's vomit-inducing, but really nicely done. Elizabeth. No, Eric first.
No, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Elizabeth.
Yes. How about we say Eric first?
No, go for it, Elizabeth.
Lewis has come out of nowhere to become this really compelling character. The duplicitous is his traitorous subjects.
Yeah.
Now, what I found really interesting, gives a reason why they don't want John. Usually there should be some sort of reason why John is not good enough for them. But they don't give a reason why they want John. They just say that they want Lewis.
Eric?
I was just going to say that this kind of scenario was not really, I mean, it would have been familiar to the audience as well, because like it would have been, you know, always calling for help, external help, whether it's like, you know, the English in Scotland, the French in Scotland, the you know, that kind of thing to sort of help sort things out. So I guess it would have been quite familiar to them as a scenario, even if like historically this play would have not, like in the history of the play, it would not have happened as it might have been a first, for example. And
other thoughts, Lois?
Well, I was just wondering why the author sticks in that reference to the Chesters when we haven't heard a thing about them before. And they have this argument about whether the Chesters deserved whatever it was that John did to them. I mean, it just seems a peculiar bit of irrelevance.
Yeah, it's really odd, isn't it? It's like you've got the death of Arthur, you've got all sorts of other things you could be bringing up. Let's mention some insignificant incident. It's like saying we need to get rid of, you know, the prime minister because they don't, you know, for something really minor rather than, you know, mass incompetence. It's just, you know, they sacked an intern rather than, you know, something, you know, it is so random because I have no idea who Chester is, not turned up in any part of the play at all.
also, the language here has changed, like from the first part, like a lot of the language has changed into a lot of body language, sort of like relating to the body, the heart, the mind versus body. Not necessarily in this part of the play, but like in the previous part of where it was John against and Pandulph, where John was going, or like as soon as Salisbury came in, or they were waiting for the bastard, and he was like, "Oh yeah, the sweat with the body with the mind's disease or something," and it's like, well, there's this whole thing of body versus mind, religion versus another religion, kings versus barons, and basically conflict all over the place.
Okay, we've got one more scene to do. It's not a desperately long one, but we need to crack through it anyway. So scene 4, as it's listed in this setup, we have the entrance of King John, Bastard, Pandulph, and a many priests with them. Lots of priests.
Thus, John, thou art absolved of all thy sins and freed by order from our father's curse. Receive thy crown again, with this proviso, that thou remains true liegeman to the Pope and carry arms in right of Holy Rome.
I hold the same as tenant to the Pope, and thank your holiness for your kindness shown.
A proper jest when kings must stoop to friars. Need hath no law when friars must be kings.
Ah, but here at this moment enter a messenger. Please it your majesty, the Prince of France with all the nobles of your grace's land are marching hitherwards in good array. Where'er they set their foot, all places yield. Thy land is theirs, and not a foot holds out, but Dover Castle, which is hard besieged. And
fear not, King John. Thy kingdom is the Pope's, and they shall know his holiness hath power to beat them soon from whence he hath to do.
And there are drums and trumpets. Enter Lewis, Meloun, Salisbury, Essex, Pembroke, and all the nobles from France and England. Everybody who's still alive is on stage.
Pandulph, as gave his holiness in charge, so hath the Dauphin mustered up his troops and won the greatest part of all this land. But ill becomes your grace, Lord Cardinal, thus to converse with John that is accursed.
Louis of France, victorious conqueror, whose sword hath made this island quake for fear. Thy forwardness to fight for Holy Rome shall be remunerated to the full. But know, my lord, King John is now absolved. The Pope is pleased, the land is blessed again. and thou hast brought each thing to good effect. It resteth then that thou withdraw thy powers, and quietly return to France again. For all is done, the Pope would wish thee do.
But all's not done that Lewis came to do. Why, Pandulph, hath King Philip sent his son, and been at such excessive charge in wars, to be dismissed with words? King John shall know, England is mine, and he
Louis,
usurps my right.
Sorry. Louis, I charge thee and thy accomplices upon the pain of Pandulph's holy curse, that thou withdraw thy powers to France again, and yield up London and the neighbour towns that thou hast taken in England by the sword.
Lord Cardinal, by Louis' princely leave, it can be naught but usurpation in thee, the Pope, and all the Church of Rome, thus to insult on kings of Christendom. Now with a word to make them carry arms, then with a word to make them leave their arms. This must not be. Prince Louis, keep thine own, let Pope and Popelings curse their bellies full.
My lord of Meloun, what title had the prince to England and the crown of Albion, but such a title as the Pope confirmed? The prelate now lets fall his feigned claim. Louis is but the agent for the Pope. Then must the Dauphin cease, sith he hath ceased. But cease or no, it greatly matters not, if you, my lords and barons of this land, will leave the French and cleave unto your king. For shame, ye peers of England, suffer not yourselves, your honours and your land to fall, but with resolved thoughts beat back the French and free the land from the yoke of servitude.
Philip, not so, Lord Louis is our king, and we will follow him unto the death.
Then, in the name of Innocent the Pope, I curse the prince and all that take his part, and excommunicate the rebel peers as traitors to the king and to the Pope.
Pandulph, our swords shall bless ourselves again. Prepare thee, John. Lords, follow me, your king.
Exeunt all but King John, Pandulph, and Bastard.
Accursed John, the devil owes thee shame. Resisting Rome or yielding to the Pope, all's one. The devil take the Pope, the peers, and France. Shame be my share for yielding to the priest.
Comfort thyself, King John. The cardinal goes upon his curse to make them leave their arms.
And exit Pandulph.
Comfort, my lord, and curse the cardinal. Betake yourself to arms. My troops are pressed to answer Louis with our lusty shock. The English archers have their quivers full, their bows are bent, their pikes are pressed to push. Good cheer, my lord, King Richard. Good cheer, my lord. King Richard's fortune hangs upon the plume of warlike Philip's helm. Then let them know his brother and his son are leaders of the Englishmen at arms.
Philip, I know not how to answer thee, but let us hence to answer Louis's pride.
And they exit. It's really interesting, some of the contortions that are going on here in terms of John and Philip, with this thing of, technically they're on, Pandulph's on their side now, but they still have to curse him. Even though, Pandulph has just excommunicated their enemy. He's dealt out a swift excommunication, and the wheel is swinging back to John. I mean, the historic John kept doing these sort of shifting allegiances and things to keep some sense of balance of power in his realm, and the way he, worked that was actually quite clever in a sense. It was all still quite desperate and possibly much more cynical than the journey this character is going through, because he remains heartily against the Pope all the way through. Rah. So yeah, thoughts about this scene as this little scene with the invading French and the rebels and the king. Alan.
I mean, the one bit that's missing is the reconciliation with the papacy was historically in large part because John wanted the Pope to declare what he'd been signed up to in Magna Carta was actually ultra vires.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of things that have been quietly excised. I mean, Magna Carta just isn't there. I mean, it's rumbling as part of the plot, but it never actually happens itself. And in a sense, at the time, in a weird way, it kind of didn't as well because it's repealed almost immediately, and it's sort of later on that it has more impact. Lois.
Yeah, I was interested in the very end of this where the bastard says, you know, it's all really the good fortune of King Richard, that is my father and your brother, that is going to hover over us and make everything all right. And you notice John says, I know not how to answer thee. I don't think he's terribly happy about that.
Yes, it's easier to rally our troops with the name of your dead brother than with you, John. I think this is the moment where, yes, the slight homophone of Pandulph and Gandalf really came into play with you know, upon pain of Pandulph's holy curse.
Yeah,
Thou you shall not pass.
pretty much.
Well, and the other Tolkien reference, the Oathbreakers. You know, which is a continuing riff in the trilogy.
Anyway, let's pull it back to the play that we just read. Any additional thoughts about scene 4?
I guess historically though, like the sort of King John would be like, it's basically he's going, you know, the Pope basically called all the Catholics and all the Christians to crusades. So why can't he call himself why can't he intervene now? Basically, isn't that what he's saying? Like sort of in a way.
Well, in a sense, they are. I mean, to a degree. I mean, you know, he has now got the Pope's backing. It's just it's this reversal. I mean, he can't trust the Pope obviously because the Pope was against him earlier. So in a sense, the Pope is just as deceitful as those traitors, kind of thing.
Pretty much.
Everybody's deceitful. Anything else about Valentina? Any thoughts about this scene? Just to throw you in the deep end.
Yeah, I'm just really enjoying the plot and like how convoluted it is and how fast paced it is. I'm just like, yeah, and it's like it's not, you know, it's pretty understandable. So it's not like there's nothing there that I'm going like, oh my god, what does that mean or anything like that. So I'm just enjoying it.
There is a good, clear narrative thrust to what's going on. We know, you know, even though nobody's really a cardboard cutout villain, you know, the general state of whether, you know, what they're doing, why they're doing it, does seem to come across quite well.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts about this scene before we go into general extra time and final thoughts about the play overall so far, or this session so far? Anyone?
Well, yesterday we were talking a lot, well, in the previous sessions, we were talking a lot about rhyme, whereas now there doesn't seem to be very much of it. I don't know if that's just, I mean, obviously it is intentional, but like, yeah.
Yeah, there's less humor as well, or overt humor. I mean, it's never had a comedy subplot. You know, we've only really had one comedy scene with people climbing in and out of chests. Other scenes that have comedy as part of their structure, but they're not comedy, and it has generally got a lot more serious, I think. Okay, as we enter extra time, I'll go around for final thoughts. So I'll start with Francis. You've read the first little over half of the play. It's closer to 2/3. You know, and that break is basically artificial. The play careers onwards. How have you found the play so far?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Like Valentina said, it cracks along, and I'm enjoying all the plot twists. You know, as I said before we went into record, you know, it just keeps wrong-footing you. You think something's going to happen, and then it doesn't. You know, something else completely different happens. So it's a very surprising piece of work, I think. And I also take your point, Rob, that the play's short on light relief. I noticed that in the first half. Like you said, the only comic scene was the bit with the Catholics, with the clergy.
Mm. Yes, none in a chest. Always exciting.
Yeah, nuns are great comedy material, as I'm very fond of saying.
There's Pamela as that nun and King John. Thoughts about the play so far?
Firstly, I have to say, as someone educated by nuns, they are not fun.
Other nuns are available.
I had scary nuns. Anyway, I also am really enjoying the play. It really keeps you on your toes. I am thinking just how easy it is to get the Pope back on side, and how then, that I wasn't quite expecting that suddenly the Pope would be like, okay, now everything's fine with you, and I'm going to excommunicate Louis and all of his supporters. So yeah, that kind of took me back a little bit. Yeah, I've really grown to like King John. My closing thought yesterday was how much I didn't trust him, and I think partly it's actually embodying him. Joke. That yeah, I've grown to appreciate him more, or the writing of him more, in this session. Yeah, I'm really sad I'm not going to be here tomorrow. I'll have to watch how it goes to find out.
Yeah, well, King
I
John's victorious. He lives forever, and
doesn't get poisoned.
it's great.
Cool. Okay.
He's still king now.
I thought so. Yeah, he's like mummified somewhere, like that guy in the end of Indiana Jones, just waiting.
Lynn, final thoughts?
Yeah. I have been thinking this whole time about what Francis said before we started recording, and he sort of reiterated just now about the play faking us out, wrong-footing us as an audience over and over again. There's going to be a decisive battle where there's a battle, but it's not decisive. The marriage is going to fix everything. Well, the marriage happens, but it doesn't fix anything. We're going to mutilate Arthur. No, we're not. And that's sort of a parallel phenomenon to, I think, this sort of larger project that the play seems to have of confusing us about the nature of reality. I mean, is there a higher power or not? Is there a divinity that shapes our ends or not? Are right and wrong meaningful concepts or not? Because at some points there does seem to be a providential force at work. We see the moons. In the beginning, the bastard has this intuition. Something puts it in his head that he's the natural son of the previous king. And we have a prophet that turns out to be a prophet who tells the truth. But at the same time, on the ground, things are so self-serving and so cynical. So I think the audience kind of doesn't know where to have this story in terms of, is there a divinity at work or not? Is there a plan, a providence or not? It just keeps giving us conflicting evidence.
Alan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's moving still at a cracking pace. I think one thing that would be needed in a production would be some notes on A, location, and B, the passage of time. As you said, there's a 2-year gap within one scene.
Yeah, but I don't think that's an apparent time gap. I was just throwing that in for trivia.
But I think it would make more sense if that were made explicit to the audience.
Would it? I mean, the Magna Carta just doesn't happen as far as this play is concerned. So it's a nice bit of something to talk about. But I'd do the reverse. I'd like to massage away any connection with history at times, because otherwise you're more likely to get confused than the other. It is also very long, I should point out. This is a very long play. So another thing we should have in the back of our minds is what perhaps we want to get rid of. what routes might we want to take with the production? This perhaps more for something to be talking about tomorrow. I don't want anyone to start, felling trees straight away. But there is a question of running time here, and what is feasible and what is not. Lois, final thoughts?
Yeah, I've read a lot of King John plays, and I think one reason he's such a popular character is that the dramatists all have difficulty reconciling what they think they're supposed to think about him, which is that he's this great proto-Protestant, with what they find in the Chronicles, which is so, pretty well unremittingly awful, but also so confusing. And part of the problem with the play is, is this just the dramatist having difficulty dealing with a lot of inconsistent and confusing material, or is the whole point of it that everything is inconsistent and confusing, and is the idea to encourage a kind of cynical attitude to power and religion?
Yes, it feels very modern in that sense, doesn't it? Elizabeth, final thoughts?
Yeah, for my final thoughts are with Lewis and John. They're both really compelling characters by this point, and it's hard to know who to root for. I root for John because he's already there, he's already in place. But the Plantagenets are really gunning for the throne, and I think it adds this really sense of intrigue that's much more fun this time than it was last session. There haven't been any horrific murders, but we haven't needed them, except for maybe Arthur.
Yes, that's the question with Arthur. Is it a murder, or are they technically liable? Because he sort of died under their, prisoner under control sort of aegis there. Sarah, final thoughts?
Well, just on that last point about Arthur, yeah, I think they're responsible, because he wouldn't have thrown himself off the battlements in a desperate fit if he hadn't been trying to get away, and he wouldn't have been trying to get away if they hadn't just told him they were about to put his eyes out and then change their minds at the last minute. So yeah, I think probably they were responsible for his death. Yeah, I've just been catching up because I missed that last scene entirely due to a small domestic incident. But I gather from what Pamela and Lynn was saying that there's just been a massive Pope U-turn.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So yeah, what I said earlier, I'm really enjoying all the political shenanigans. Aliki said the other day, which reminded me of House of Cards. I'm actually showing my age because I'm thinking of the older version of House of Cards, the Francis Urquhart version. But I'm really enjoying those parallels, all the intrigue and the side swapping, and it has, even though it is a long play, it has kept up its pace, I think, from the beginning. And yeah, looking forward to the conclusion tomorrow.
Eric, final thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, because everyone's mentioning that it's confusing, with all the back and forth going on, and I'm like, well, we also know another play that's confusing and but a lot more comical, that we're, like the Peddler's Prophecy, which is like the other end of the spectrum completely, in terms of confusion and sort of like, it's just very sort of, I don't know, this play seems very dark and serious and sort of devolving very quickly, whereas the other one is much more, I don't know, it's like the tension continues to climb in both plays, but you don't really know what's going on in either play.
Yes, because in the evening sessions with this week, we are looking at the Peddler's Prophecy, which is a very different kettle of fish in terms of, in a sense that very little actually happens, but it's very unclear what that very little is, which we still have yet to figure out. We've got more tonight looking at that. Dan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I've kept pretty quiet during this session because I've just been listening along and trying to picture how this would be staged and whether it would hold interest. I think for this room, absolutely it would. I am struck by the fact, Eric had pointed it out, and I'd been thinking it the entire time, that we're not talking at all about the rhyme and the structure anymore of this play, because it's essentially become a verse play. I think the two messengers or three messengers are the only ones who introduced prose into it. It's more telling to me that it has become, as you'd said, a modern feeling cynical play, and whatever humor was there is pretty much gone. I've seen the Arthur scenes in other King Johns played as humorous, just because it just seems a little bit goofy how it happens. And apart from that, and apart from how that's staged, I would be counting on some pretty good actors to be able to, I guess, keep us interested, to show the side switching, because otherwise I can see this in the wrong hands, going into the just too serious talk route, and people start to say, okay, when's something actually going to happen? Because there's been a lot of promise of things happening and it's not happened. And I think that's the joy of the play, but I'm wondering for, I guess, a wider audience, whether that would keep it up. Maybe I'm the only one who's concerned about that, but
no, I think it's a good point, because it's I think there needs to be this constant build up of frustration from, say, John and from many people of just going, why is this not going right? And that seems to be a really strong motivator for the actors as well, and to be able to show that, and that's something that could come out. And I think it's a very important point, to highlight. That there aren't many moments of release which a big battle scene gives you. We do get a little bit of battle action, but not as much as perhaps we would hope for in a history play.
Right. And so I am thinking that the more and more I'm thinking that this was intended to be a two-part play, because it is a dramatic shift, in my opinion, that happens structurally, rhythmic wise. I know everyone's been saying it's been cracking along, but I've been feeling more of it's just gone very, very serious, very, very fast. So that's, maybe I'm in the minority again, but
I'd be delighted. I'd be poo-pooing the two-part thing for the whole set. Waiting for someone to push back on it. Let's see where that goes. Lois.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of this before, but the two-part structure, I think people have often pointed out that the first play tends to be light and the second play tends to be much heavier. It's the opposite of what you would think. You would expect if you were writing a two-part play that you'd want the first part to be the serious, gloomy one, and then you'd like to send the audience away after the second part feeling happy. But in fact, if you look at I guess to take a safe example would be the two Antonio plays by Marston, where Antonio and Melida ends happily and Antonio's Revenge ends very unhappily with bodies all over the place. And there are a number of plays you can find that pattern in.
Yes, we've done a fair few. We've done the two Antonio plays. We also did. Well, it's not quite a fair doubling, but Geronimo and the Spanish Tragedy, albeit Geronimo has been made much more comic at a later date than it probably was when it first came around. But yes, absolutely, that flow. I mean, one of the reasons I balked it is that the flow of the narrative feels it feels like a very odd place to start a play. And it seems to flow very naturally on from the previous scene. I'm slightly irritated actually that the way these sessions have worked, that I haven't been able to bridge that gap during one session to feel the flow of scenes. That's how it landed. I didn't intend to do it this way, but it's just we had irritatingly long scene at the end of the last session, and I made a decision. Lois.
Yeah, I think that this could well be a sign of some kind of revision. I mean, the other plays I can think of like that are the two Huntingdon plays, The Downfall of Robert Earl of Huntingdon and The Death of Robert Earl of Huntingdon. And it's quite clear with those that something went completely wrong in the structure. I mean, the first part actually looks as if it's going to end, and then somebody says, hey, wait a minute, there's all this other material. Oh yeah, well, we better get that in, but no, we haven't really got time. Let's put it in another play. And then the other play is quite clearly two different plays that have been cobbled together with some of the same people in both, but clearly the whole thing is just kind of a mess. And, I was wondering whether something like that might have happened here. Maybe the Chesters were actually in it at some point, for instance.
They're the only real inconsistency, because everything else seems to flow naturally out of everything else. I mean, I haven't been sitting there going, "Oh, that was a massive jump."
Yeah.
But you know, I continue to be delighted to be pushed. If people have theories, then or thoughts. I mean, would you today? Perhaps that's a better question. Would we today do it in 2 parts or 1? I believe it has been staged as 2 parts. So you would do it as 2.
Yes.
But you would start with the death of Arthur.
No. I would do it as 2. Because I mean,
the second part, you would start with the death of Arthur as your part,
yes,
beginning
I
of
would
part 2.
start there. Yes, I would. Yes. For the reasons I had stated before, it just feels like there's enough of a shift there, structurally, rhythmically, tonally, that I'd want to have it too. And it is a long play if it's done as one.
Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, just for that reason alone, that I'd want to split it.
See, if I was doing it in 2-part play, I'd probably go from somewhere around the capture of Arthur and to conclude. I don't know if that would work, but I just find to start with the death of Arthur is slightly odd.
I mean, I agree with you, but this goes back to a comment I'd made before, that if you're going to stage these plays are little seen or not well known at all. I'd want to keep it as, I mean, in a sense, faithful as possible to that text, so people don't wonder how we've modernized it to make it more palatable to the audiences of today. That's just me, though.
Well, we also have the option of other mediums that are available, so we could do it in its entirety, but over to be viewed at your leisure in whatever medium you prefer. Sarah, very briefly.
I don't know if I'd do it in 2 parts because I haven't got to the end of it yet. But if you were going to do it in 2 parts, it occurs to me you could actually move the second part to after Arthur's death and finish the first half with Essex's call to arms. Like, come on, let's rally together. Let's have a revolt, and then like leave it there on that little cliffhanger, and then start the next play with the continuation of that. Might be quite a good way to break it.
Valentina, you have the final thought is with you. Do you have anything to throw in?
No, let's just leave it there. Just leave it there.
Oh, it took 3 sessions for someone to finally go for that question, and now hopefully that can is open. We can argue about it throughout the whole of the next session. Hopefully you'll be able to join us for that. All that remains is to thank the readers today, and Helen Good for helping prepare the text. And thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.